Hi everyone, welcome back to episode 5 in series 1 of my F1 2022 My Team Career Mode, and this time we are in America for the Miami Grand Prix. If you did miss the previous episode, I've put a link in the description below, and there's also a link in the top right corner of this video, so feel free to take a look at that one. And if you haven't had the chance to see it yet, then spoiler alert, it was pretty much a disaster. From a poor quali session to a rain-filled sprint and a race littered with mistakes, and to top it all off, I crash out for my second DNF of the season, my second DNF in a row, taken out by Ocon in the Alpine, who some might say is our sister team, as we are the only other car on the grid with a Renault engine after all. So not a great race and not a great way to further extend the relationship between the two teams. No points for Jack either. He ended up in 17th place, but higher up the grid, Sainz got his first win of the season, making it 4 wins out of 4 for the Scuderia, and there was another double podium finish, this time for Mercedes, as Hamilton and Russell claimed P2 and P3. In other news, AlphaTauri had a great race, a P7 for them and also a P9 for them. Tsunoda doing a great job to claim P7, and that means AlphaTauri climb above us in the constructor standings. We do, however, remain above Aston Martin and Williams, who, by the way, almost did a great job in getting Albon points, P12 for him. I questioned their strategy on the hard tyre, but the mixture of DNFs and the virtual safety car really helped them out. But fortunately for us, P12 doesn't equal points and we stay above them. And at the top end, Ferrari, well, it's 4 races in and they are absolutely dominating the constructor standings. 87 points clear. That is crazy. Such has been their dominance at the top step of every podium so far. And Mercedes overtake Red Bull in what already seems like the fight for second place after a strong showing in Imola for them. Meanwhile, Sainz manages to cut Leclerc's lead down to 17 points, and it seems this early on in the season it's going to be an inter-team battle for that top spot on the driver standings as they pull away from Hamilton in third. Meanwhile for us, somehow we still find ourselves above the likes of Ocon and Ricciardo, really showing their teammates are propping their team up in the constructor standings. I'm still hopeful that we'll secure that 15-point target to get our sponsor goal, but with every passing race with a poor quali or DNF does us no favours in doing that. And speaking of sponsor, we are now up to level 5 acclaim, which means we can finally add our secondary sponsor to our portfolio. And looking through these sponsors, there are quite a few interesting ones. We've got complete all practice programs, score 1 constructors point, outqualify your rival, complete a race with no DNFs. Well, based on the last couple of races, I'm definitely not going to be taking that one. But the one that has caught my eye is by Salve. I'm going to call him Salve. Yeah. Beat your rival during a race. So ultimately, that is the goal anyway, and they look like they're going to give us a good weekly income and goal bonus. So I'm going to go ahead and select Salve as my new secondary sponsor. And I'm also going to make sure that I actually add their logos onto the car this time as I learn from my previous mistakes. In terms of facilities, we don't really have too much money, so there isn't really any upgrades we can make at this point, aside from improve our pit crew performance. But to be honest, I'm not really sure how much of an impact to our overall standings that will make right now, so I'm going to hold off on that one and look to build up more money so I can reinvest it in maybe something like build quality or fabrication for our other departments. And in terms of R&D, we have 2 upgrades pending, one for the engine power, which should be due before the Miami Grand Prix, and a drag reduction upgrade, which won't be until later. We are going to go ahead and repurchase the weight reduction upgrade that failed in the last episode, and fortunately that will too come in before Miami, so that is great news. And in terms of other upgrades, my aero team is at max capacity and I don't have any powertrain upgrades I can actually make right now, so it will have to be a durability upgrade, which I guess with the amount of DNFs we've had isn't necessarily a bad thing. So with that in mind, I've decided to go ahead with a major gearbox upgrade, so hopefully that should come through and that will help us massively with gearbox reliability. And if we look at the performance charts just before we start quali, fortunately our engine power and weight distribution upgrades have come in, but even with those upgrades, Williams have made further upgrades and we remain bottom as the worst car on the grid. I guess we've kept tabs on Williams with those upgrades. Without them we would probably be significantly further behind, but that reduced cash and acclaim is definitely having a big impact on our ability to progress and keep up with the AI on this career mode. Elsewhere, Red Bull and Ferrari neck and neck at the top, but Mercedes are definitely closing the gap as McLaren and Alpine take a big leap away from the other midfield pack to definitely cement themselves as the two main teams fighting for that coveted best of the rest status. And as for us, just where we're at the moment, I feel for us to get anything out of this Grand Prix, we're going to have to hope for chaos once again. And I feel like that should really be the motto of this series, hope for chaos. So let's just see how we get on in qualifying. And on to qualifying, you'll see I'm on lap 3 as Albon seems to be getting my way, going through turn 7 and turn 8. Hopefully he's going to move out the way he does. Gives us a little bit of a slipstream as we use DRS as well on this first straight in Miami. But yeah, you can see I'm on lap 3, so I have already done 2 laps of this qualifying, and I'm now on my second set of fresh soft tyres, because the first time I had a really poor run, and the second time I used those tyres again and really struggled as well. So I'm hoping this third lap will be able to get me somewhere. I've got 3 greens and I will go into last. It is not enough. I will start last yet again on the grid, out-qualified by my teammate by the smallest of margins. Unbelievable. My rival Stroll out-qualifies me too, so that is a point down on the scoreboard against him. Vettel, well, he's doing well to make it into Q2 once again. Guan Yu Zhou really underperforming in that Alfa Romeo yet again. And aside from that, it is the usual culprits into and out of Q1. So disappointing for us. We'll both start on the back of the row again. Frustrating, as I really thought I'd done enough to at least out-qualify Jack, but it seems the AI like to pull out another 1 or 2 seconds on that last lap just before the standings are shown. So it's actually really difficult to know whether you've done a good lap or not. But anyway, it's last on the grid for me as we head on over to Sunday for the Miami Grand Prix.
Welcome to the Magic City. We're here at the Miami International Autodrome, the home of the Hard Rock Stadium, a multi-purpose sports and entertainment hub which has hosted Super Bowls, Baseball World Series, numerous rock concerts, and now, for the first time, Formula One. Sitting at the southeastern coast of Florida, the Miami International Autodrome has 19 corners and 3.36 miles of racing. It's a circuit designed to encourage close racing while meeting the highest safety standards. Either way, I'm sure it's one that will please the fans. So with the race not far away from starting, here's what today's grid rundown looks like. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, edging out Sergio Perez, who lines up P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Verstappen, Sainz, George Russell and Hamilton, Norris, Ricciardo, Fernando Alonso and Valtteri Bottas, Ocon, Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda and Magnussen, Mick Schumacher, Vettel, Lance Stroll and Alex Albon, Joe, Latifi, Aitken and the rookie. That's it then, it's time to go racing as we head down trackside for today's race. It's race day yet again, and joining me for a chat is Anthony Davidson. And our racers are certainly in for a rough day today. What will you be watching out for as they head into turn 1?
Well, the start of the race is always one of the most nerve-wracking parts. You have to hope that everyone is able to get off to a clean start, and this is possibly the trickiest part of the entire race. So many drivers in such a small space, and finding your braking point into turn 1 as well. It's a testament to the driver's skill that there aren't more incidents.
So Charles Leclerc back on pole, P1 for him, and Perez and Verstappen managed to separate the two Ferraris, P2 and P3, with Carlos Sainz in P4. As for us, you'll see both Jack and I are starting on the hard tyre. I actually tried to switch to start on the mediums because I'm really not convinced starting on the hard tyre is the best option, but it wouldn't let me, which is kind of frustrating, so I'm stuck on the hard tyre. So if anyone else has had the same problem, please let me know if there's any way of changing that. The only positive is I can see Guan Yu Zhou, he's also starting on the hard, so I've just got to hope things go in our favour and maybe we can have an Albon Imola style race, and I hope these tyres will be able to get me up perhaps near the top 10 in a point scoring position. However, I doubt it somehow. as we come in now to try and park up on the grid again. I do come in quite hot, but I do manage to nail the purple. I feel like I'm coming into these things quicker and quicker each time I race, but it seems to be working because I'm managing to hit purple as we now count down the lights for the Miami Grand Prix. It's 5 red lights, and it is away we go, and it's a decent start off the line. I seem to have the better straight line speed than my teammate, and I get myself hopefully up into P1 as I almost go into the back of Latifi as I make a dive down the inside, and I've managed to get myself up into P20, although a bit of a kick of the rear, and Guan Yu Zhou's managed to get back ahead of me, but he's on the hard tyre, so it is important that I try and get ahead of him, and I do eventually manage to squeeze ahead of him, and I've now got my rival Stroll right up ahead of me in P19 as all the cars seem now to be settling in to a normal pattern, as we're going to have a look to see how the start was for the rest of the grid. Leclerc looks like he got off to a decent start. He does, but Perez gets off to an even better start, and Perez goes around the inside. I think there was contact between the two of them, and Perez is up to P1, and Verstappen struggling to hold off Carlos Sainz. I think he is going to be able to hold him off. He is. George Russell in P5, Lewis Hamilton in P6, with the two McLarens, Lando Norris and Ricciardo right behind him in P7 and P8, Alonso, Bottas behind them, Ocon in P11, and we work our way down the grid. And I said earlier, all of the teams have sort of settled into a single file rhythm, and that is the case pretty early on, except for myself and Guan Yu Zhou, who tries to go round the outside of me. I thought it was myself. It's not, it's my teammate Jack. So Jack was all over the back of him, but unfortunately couldn't get the move done as we go right up the grid, and Alonso goes for a dive down the inside on the two McLarens. He manages to get past them, and Lando Norris is going to go wheel to wheel with him, and he's going to have the lead over him, and Alonso manages to slot in P8 ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. So more problems for Daniel Ricciardo in a Grand Prix on this My Team career mode as he gets overtaken by Alonso. It looks like there's green flags. Don't know if there was any issues earlier as to why they'd be waving them. It's pretty obvious that it's green flags at the moment, but Sergio Perez leads the way from Leclerc in P2, Max Verstappen P3. We work all the way down. Daniel Ricciardo P9, Bottas in P10. We're working our way down to myself as Guan Yu Zhou and myself. I have to cut down the inside to try and stop him as he's got the far greater straight line speed, but eventually I do manage just to keep in front of him, and I manage to hold on to the lofty heights of P20. But the problem is, as I'm doing that, I'm also then having to defend, which is pushing me further back, as Guan Yu Zhou is going to go down the inside, and he has far more straight line speed than me as Jack tries to go down the inside of me as well. Sneaky little devil there from Jack. I managed to hold him off, but Guan Yu Zhou in that Alpha has far more speed than me, and I have to just let him go. So I'm now down to P21 as we make our way, I should say, getting a bit too excited there, back up the grid, and now we see Lance Stroll, our rival, with Latifi behind him, and Albon all over the back of Nicholas Latifi. So I've got to kind of hope, I think Latifi's definitely the slower driver of the two, so I've got to kind of hope that he holds up Albon, which will hopefully help me. And speaking of holding up, Ocon is being held up by Valtteri Bottas, but hopefully for not too much longer for him as he goes down the inside, and there's definite contact between the two of them. I didn't see any issues or any parts flying off the car, so hopefully won't be too many issues for Bottas as he manages to keep ahead of Ocon, but Ocon just keeps his nose in. He doesn't. He shuts the door on Ocon. Good stuff there from Valtteri Bottas. Alonso still in P8. We're working our way back up. Sainz in P4, Verstappen P3, Leclerc P2, and Sergio Perez continues to lead the way as now we go to my P of E on lap 4. I've got the run on Guan Yu Zhou. I'm using as much ERS as I possibly can. I've also got DRS on him as well. I'm going to move to the right. He's going to try and squeeze me as much as he possibly can against the wall, but I do have the speed. I go wide round the left-hander, and somehow I managed to keep myself ahead of Guan Yu Zhou. So maybe he locked up, or maybe he had problems going around that left-hander too, but I do manage to keep myself ahead of him, and I am now back up to P20. So important move. We are the only two on hard tyres that get a pretty woeful exit out of that left-hander onto the second main straight of this race, and I'm pretty sure Guan Yu Zhou is closing in on me. It's yellow flags though. Someone's gone up ahead. Well, hold on a minute. He's right alongside me, and I'm pretty sure he just went ahead of me. I don't really know whether or not he managed to do that with the yellow or under the green flag as someone's off. It's Bottas. I think he's got a puncture. So Valtteri Bottas is having another problem. And speaking of problems, Latifi has got a problem as Albon is trying to go in ahead of him round the outside, but Latifi's going to defend the inside. He manages to keep the position, and Albon has to tuck in behind him again and settle for P18. So no team orders for Williams there as they continue to fight, which is definitely going to help me try and claw positions back. But most importantly, I've got to try and claw a position back from Guan Yu Zhou, who overtook me, I'm pretty sure, during a yellow flag. I don't know whether or not he was able to sneak that in during the green, but either way, he's managed to get back ahead as Latifi manages to defend from Albon, who cannot get ahead of him, but he will have DRS down this main straight and see whether or not he can make a move. He's going to try to... He's got the inside line. He's going to make the move down the left-hand side. Surely he's going to make the move here. He's going to squeeze Latifi and they hit into each other. What are they doing? And they've lost something. Something's gone. Looks like an end plate or maybe an issue with the front wing. I don't know. I'm not sure which one of them has lost it. It's Albon ahead, so I'm going to assume it's Latifi who's perhaps lost his end plate. I think he may have done. Looks like he has on the left-hand side. So Nicholas Latifi having a bit of an issue with his teammate there. And that is good for us because surely he will have to pit. And that means we will go up a place as soon as he does. So, yeah, a bit of a problem there for Latifi. I'm going to just hold fire with him just to see if he does go into the pits. As we go round this left-hander, he is going to go into the pits. He is. So he definitely has a problem as Guan Yu Zhou and myself go ahead and move ourselves up into P18 and P19, and someone who is making moves as well is Mick Schumacher as he now makes moves on Yuki Tsunoda into P13. Lance Stroll and Vettel behind them, as Schumacher now trying to make the move on Gasly as well. So they are wheel to wheel going around this left-hander into turn 7 and turn 8 as he's going to manage to keep it. Is he going to manage to keep it? He does manage to keep hold of it, but they are wheel to wheel, but he should be able to keep hold of it. But they're not, they're still wheel to wheel. This is unbelievable stuff between Schumacher and Gasly as Gasly now finally tucks in behind him. Schumacher makes the move, gets himself up into P12. And I now go down the left-hand side trying to make the move on Guan Yu Zhou. I brake really late. I'm pretty sure I lock up both my rear tyres. I'm pretty sure there was contact. There definitely was contact with Guan Yu Zhou. Got a little warning from the FIA with a collision from him. But I'm pretty sure he could have damage now off the back of that, as I am now 1.2 seconds ahead of him, and there's no reason for me to be that far ahead of him, so he must have damage after that collision. Well, to be honest, I'm not really that bothered. It kind of serves him right, really, for trying to overtake me on a yellow flag. So if he does have problems, then we're about to find out whether or not he goes into the pits as I go round the final left-hander into the final bend. But I think he is going to have problems. Is he going to go into the pits? He's 1.4 seconds behind me now. 1.7, 1.9. He does. He goes into the pits. So he definitely had a problem there as I go now into turn 1. Slightly wide, not along the racing line as I would have wanted to. But now I've got my teammate 3 seconds behind me, and Sergio Perez now leads the race on lap 9. Charles Leclerc second. The two McLarens in P5 and P6. Norris in P7 keeping hold of them, but he does a 360. I was just saying he was keeping hold of them, no pressure on him. He had Alonso several seconds behind him, but he's gone and done a 360 and he has lost P7. Fernando Alonso in the Alpine has overtaken him, and now Norris is going to have an eyeful of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo right in his mirrors, as Ricciardo is surely ready and primed to overtake him on this next DRS zone. Whether or not he's going to be able to do it is another question, but Fernando Alonso takes P7 after a silly mistake from Lando Norris. As now we move on to lap 13, back to my point of view, and Stroll and Albon have gone into the pits. Looks like Magnussen and Ricciardo ahead of me have also gone in the pits as well. So I'm now up to P15. I think Ricciardo, yes he will. He'll come out about 4.1 seconds ahead of me on the hard tyre. Now it's cut down to 3 seconds. So clearly he's now struggling to warm up those hard tyres, just as I was early on in the race. I've got Magnussen right behind me, 1.9 seconds ahead of me. Sorry, behind me on the hard tyre, but he is in a much faster car. So I think it's only going to be a matter of time before he catches me up, as I now try just to keep it tidy heading into this first DRS area. As now lap 14, you'll see Magnussen is catching me. He's 1.5 seconds behind. We've now got Schumacher and Vettel who have gone in the pits, and Daniel Ricciardo getting my McLarens mixed up, has pulled away. He's now 4 seconds ahead of me, as I now have Ocon in front of me. He's 2 seconds ahead of me, so whether or not Ricciardo overtook him or Ocon came out of the pits, I'm not too sure. Probably came out of the pits, and he's now 1.7 seconds ahead of me, with Magnussen closing the gap. And I've also managed to keep ahead of Schumacher, so I'm going to hope that these hard tyres, if I can make them last for a little bit longer, I can go on to the mediums and hopefully make up a few places and be in a position to try and make some overtakes later on in the race. But lap 16, I said Magnussen was going to catch me up, and he does catch me up. He's 0.6 seconds behind me as we move up the grid to Tsunoda, who's got himself up into P8, but he's got Fernando Alonso in P9 right up his backside, with George Russell in P5 ahead of Lewis Hamilton in P6. Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc and Perez in 1 to 4 positions, as the Red Bull and the Ferraris pretty much in a league of their own, 20 seconds ahead of George Russell. I don't know whether or not that's just because he's pitted or not, but now we've got Tsunoda and Alonso wheel to wheel going round that left-hander. There was contact between the two of them. Whether or not that resulted in any damage, I don't know. Alonso is going to hold the line. He's going to try and see if he can get ahead of Tsunoda here just before they go round this final chicane, and he does manage to get ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. So great driving there from the veteran Fernando Alonso. As we cut back to me, I'm now 3 seconds behind Ocon, and I've got Kevin Magnussen, who's in DRS on this straight. Surely he is going to make absolute mincemeat of me as he pulls to the left hand side. He's going to easily make the overtake. I'm not really going to fight it too much. My fight today is not with Kevin Magnussen. He's going to easily overtake me. Didn't even need to get to the final left-hander, as I go slightly wide round there, as I'm now going to cut into the pits on lap 16 going into lap 17, and it's going to be very, very interesting now to see where I come out. So I'm hoping I can get an optimal turn in here as I go into the pits. So let's see whether or not I can turn in. I do get an optimal turn in, so fingers crossed my pit crew can make this work. And they do make it work, and according to my PlayStation, it's pit perfection. So absolute pit perfection from my team, and we will come out here in P19, so not as good as perhaps I thought it would be, but we are ahead of Guan Yu Zhou with 3 seconds, well, 2 seconds now ahead of Guan Yu Zhou. So a decent pit stop, managed to put a gap between myself and Guan Yu Zhou in P20. So overall, some decent stuff, and I'm now only 3.5 seconds behind Stroll and Albon, who are both on the hard tyre. So going to be an interesting last 10 laps in this Grand Prix as we watch Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez on lap 18 come into the pits. Sergio Perez remains ahead of Carlos Sainz in the pits, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see where they come out, as Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen and George Russell right behind them, and it looks as though Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen are going to come out ahead of Perez, and so is George Russell. So George Russell is going to tuck in behind Perez, He's going to come out ahead of Carlos Sainz. So Perez and Carlos Sainz have dropped positions to P3 and P5. So disaster pit stops for them. Whether it was just a slow one or whether or not they were just slow on the in-lap, I don't know. But either way, terrible, terrible for them. And Charles Leclerc, well, he will go into P1, so great stuff for him. He regains the lead of this Grand Prix as I'm now being chased down by Daniel Ricciardo, who is on the soft tyre. So something pretty dreadful has happened with Ricciardo. I don't know why he's had to pit again onto the soft tyre, whether it's a strategy decision or whether or not he was struggling, made contact, but to me that sounds like Ricciardo has had another problem in this race, and that will be 5 races in a row that Daniel Ricciardo will have a problem on this My Team career mode. So pretty disaster season so far for him, as he's going to make the move on me down the inside into turn 1. He makes it look pretty simple. As I said, I'm not really going to fight him either, because my fight is not with a much faster McLaren. In my head, I'm thinking as I go slightly wide there, if he can catch up to Stroll, I'm now 1.4 seconds behind. If he can catch up to Stroll and Albon ahead of him, he can slow them down, and hopefully I can then catch up. And that is exactly what he's doing, as Albon is now overtaken by Stroll, and he goes wide around turn 1, and I am right up the backside of Ricciardo. So I just have to be patient here and hopefully wait for Ricciardo to try and get ahead of both Albon and Stroll. It shouldn't be too long because he's on the softs and they're on the hards, as I almost go careering into the back of him. I have to put the brakes on pretty quickly there. but I'm hoping if he can get past them, I can just be patient and bide my time, pick my spot, and hopefully get ahead of both of them. As we continue on now to lap 23, and it's actually taking a lot longer than I thought it would for Ricciardo to get ahead of them, but he is going to go down the left-hand side of Albon. I'm pretty sure he's going to be able to make the move. He is. I'm now right behind Albon as well, and I'm going to make the dive into turn 7 and turn 8 into past Albon, and I get past him up into P17. I almost went into the side of Daniel Ricciardo there. I had to put the brakes on pretty quickly. I am fortunately going to have DRS as the activation zone is slightly earlier, so I'm going to use that as much ERS as I can, but I don't have any left because I've been absolutely smashing it all the way down these straights earlier. I am going to hold on to the lead ahead of Albon as we make a little bit of contact there, and it looks like Ricciardo still cannot get ahead of Lance Stroll ahead of him. So again, if he can just continue to squabble with him, I can continue to bide my time. He will probably get ahead of him here if he is going to have DRS, and hopefully I can follow on behind them and make the move on Lance Stroll. But Albon, I've got to wait for him as he's going to have far more straight line speed in a faster Williams. He's 0.4 seconds behind me. I don't think he's going to have enough time to get ahead of me on the straight. He's not, as Ricciardo makes the move ahead of Stroll. But the problem is I was too far behind on that straight, and I'm not able to make the move myself. So I am going to have to try and do the hard work, as Stroll now pulls out a 1.4 second lead ahead of me. So I'm going to have to really put my foot down to try and catch Lance Stroll with the remaining 5 laps of this race, and just make sure that I don't make any stupid mistakes to allow Alexander Albon to get back ahead of me, as I am already closing the gap now. 0.6 seconds behind Stroll as Ricciardo has streaked away from him on those soft tyres. I'm so close now to the back of Stroll. I'm going to make the same move I did on Albon into turn 7 and 8, and I do manage it. Great move. I've got far superior grip on these medium tyres than he does on the hards. I get ahead of him. I'm going to try and use ERS, as much battery as I possibly can, to keep the position ahead of Stroll. He is only 0.1 second. He's 1/10 behind me. I go defensive on the left-hand side. He's got more speed. I'm going to go down the inside, brake late. I do brake late, go slightly wide, but I do just about keep the position from Stroll, and I keep myself into P16, and I'm hoping now I will be able to keep the lead ahead of him. And speaking of the lead, Max Verstappen all over the back of Charles Leclerc down the straight. He's going to go round the outside on the final left-hander. They are going to go wheel to wheel, the two of them, down into turn 1 past the checkered flag. Max Verstappen will have the inside line into turn 1. He doesn't even need turn 1. He is easily able to go past Charles Leclerc, and those Red Bull upgrades really paying dividends to Max Verstappen as he takes the lead of the Miami Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc in P2, Sergio Perez and Carlos Sainz behind them. Carlos Sainz now 3 seconds behind Hamilton, a further 4 seconds behind him, and George Russell in P6. It's a familiar sight for those two Mercedes. Fernando Alonso in P7 after Lando Norris's mistake earlier on, as Alexander Albon looks to make a move round the outside on Stroll, and there's contact between the two of them. I'm pretty sure that was bad contact between the two of them, and it was. Albon comes into the pits on lap 25 going into lap 26, so it doesn't really look like he's got any problems with his front wing. I don't know whether or not maybe that was a strategy decision, I don't know, but it doesn't really seem like it would be. But anyway, definite contact between the two of them, and that has massively helped me, as Ricciardo is now 7 seconds behind me on the soft, so he's had to go back into the pits to put another set of soft tyres on, and that has forced him now 6.6 seconds behind me, so he's had another absolute shocker in this race. Stroll P17 a further 7.8 seconds behind me, so I'm pretty sure I'm 10 seconds behind Vettel. I'm not really going to be able to make up any points. I'm just on a fuel saving mode at the moment, but who might be able to make up some points on the last lap is Pierre Gasly in P12. He tries to make the move on Kevin Magnussen. They are wheel to wheel, but Magnussen shuts the door on lap 29, the last lap of the race. He manages to shut the door, and he keeps P10 from Pierre Gasly, the last point scoring position. But speaking of points, Max Verstappen will take home all of the points here in Miami. He will win. Charles Leclerc in P2 in the Ferrari, Sergio Perez in P3, Carlos Sainz in P4, and George Russell and Lewis Hamilton will come home in P5 and P6. It's another Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes top 6 lockout in this race. But for me, P15 after being last on the grid, I am pretty happy. Another solid race for us. No points, but I'm pretty happy with this race, and I will very gladly take 15th ahead of Ricciardo, so I'll stay ahead of him in the driver standings. I get driver of the day. Happy days.
So, another fantastic victory for Red Bull today. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
I think it was clear what the main contributing factor out on track was: speed. I know it sounds like an awfully reductive statement, but fast cars win races, and we saw that today with our winner.
Red Bull put up an outstanding fight for the front position today, and it's great to see it paid off for them. They do so much for the sport that you can't help but be delighted by today's race win.
So Verstappen and Red Bull claim their first victory of the season, and we continue the theme of double podiums. This time it's Red Bull with a P1 and P3. Charles Leclerc, where he can only settle for P2 after starting on pole, but finishing above Sainz will allow him to extend his lead at the top. Once again, it's a Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes top 6 lockout. Good news for our partner team. I guess you can call them our partner team, as a double points finish for Alpine. As for us, maybe, just maybe, the hard to medium strategy could be a winner. We finished P15 about 3 to 4 seconds ahead of Ricciardo after some much needed fuel saving on the last few laps, as I did actually underfuel the car at the beginning of the race. And Ricciardo, by the way, is continuing to have a horror season in that McLaren. It feels like he has problems in almost every race at the moment. And Jack, well, he's in P18, up from P21, so no points again, but at least he made some positive inroads on that race. I've beaten Stroll comfortably as well, so whilst there are no points today, I'm pretty satisfied with the outcome, especially as we are definitely the worst car on the grid. And if we take a look at the standings, Leclerc extends his lead at the top of the pack to 22 points, but Verstappen, with that win, pulls himself back up ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and is he slowly starting to pull himself into the title fight? Time will tell. Elsewhere, we are still above Gasly and Ricciardo. Ocon has somehow, well, not somehow, he has managed to get the jump on me after scoring points today. But most importantly, the Aston Martins and Williams drivers continue to remain pointless. And that means we continue to remain above the pair of them in the lofty heights of P9th in the constructors' standings. And at the top, Red Bull storm ahead of Mercedes once again with that double podium finish, and Alpine, well, they claw some points back off McLaren, so that best of the rest battle really heating up too. As for us, still stuck on 4 points. I'm still confident we can get to our target of 15. There's a long way to go, and we do have some upgrades pending. All we need is just one race to go our way, much like Jeddah, and we'll be laughing, as at least right now, neither Williams or Aston Martin are looking likely to get any points anytime soon. Anyway, if you have enjoyed this episode, please feel free to like and subscribe. I'm going to be going through the entire career mode and aiming to get episodes out every few days, so there'll be plenty more content to come. Thanks everyone for watching.